Hello, this is the second of our series on basic concepts in critical realism. I'm Priscilla Alderson and I work at University College London.
And I'm Harry Hubbard, an A-level student in Dorset.
We're going to very quickly explain to you four basic ideas in critical realism, which we hope you'll find helpful and be able to follow up in more detail later on for yourselves.
The first of these we're going to look at is the relationship between agency and structure. Of course, the first thing we have to do here is define what we mean by agency and structure. So, agency, agents are essentially, the people, individuals within society, and structures are the things around them that influence them. The sort of bigger things on a macro level. Think your big institutions like school, for example. So Durkheim defines this relationship with structures being the much more powerful aspect within this. So structures, strong structures and weak agents. For example, all people that live in a favela, for this example, will fail because of lack of good housing, um, lack of food, school, and other resources. So the agents are defined by the structures. The next view, put forward by social constructionists, is that there are strong agents and weak structures, that the individual is the defining aspect in their development. So that these wealthy men, for example, succeed because of their own brilliance, and that the more overarching structures are secondary. Another opinion is that essentially this relationship between agency and structure doesn't matter, that they're blurred together. Neither is one is stronger or weaker, and we can't really separate them, which is proposed by people like Giddens. And finally, critical realists, I think, have by far the most convincing view of this relationship, a much more dynamic and creative view, and that's that structure and agencies are constantly interacting and have a dynamic relationship. Um, so, do people shape their context, or are they shaped by them? Students and agents are changed and rechanged by their schools, by structures all the time. For example, schools define what students will learn. They define their curriculum. They even define their social interactions, when students can play, when students can talk, when they can put up their hand, even when they can go to the toilet. However, at the same time, without agents, without, in this case, pupils, um, schools wouldn't even be schools in the first place. They'd simply be open, empty buildings. Um, Students can shape school both through legitimate routes, through things like the student union, and illegitimate groups by um, I don't know, taking standing up against a teacher that's speaking down to them or whatever. Um, so powerful structures last much longer than agents, but can only exist and work through them. Fundamentally, structures can keep agents down, or help them rise. So, to take another example to really drill this through, are these girls looking like this and taking a selfie simply because they want to? Or are they influenced by today's technology, fashion, social media, news, advertising, funded by billionaires to persuade them to accept a certain worldview? So, to sum up, the relationship between agencies and structures is incredibly important, and that's why I think the dynamic explanation explained by um, by the realist is so important. And next, we're going to move on to closed and open systems. Thank you.
Thanks, Harry. Now, in closed systems are one single cause. But this just does not happen in social life. For instance, if people are shoplifting, uh, there could be all kinds of reasons why they're doing it that led up to it. There's not just one single cause ever in our lives. We live in open systems of many interacting causal influences. Other people, friends, hopes, fun, worries, social media, school, college, or work. Advertisements, money, family, plans, resources, time. So that means that it's very difficult for social scientists to identify the cause of people's behaviors and actions. And instead, they need to take a much more complicated, complex approach to finding out why people do things. The third concept we're going to look at is values and morality. And this links to the theories and methods in the A-level course. So there are four different ways of thinking about values and social science. And the first, the main one, assumes that values can be separate from social science. Positivist factual scientists say they are value-free and objective. That means that the object of their research can be transferred directly to us, the readers, the listeners of their work, without their subjective influence intervening at all. They just tell us what it is. They assume that social norms or economic cost-effective aims are common sense, not values. The second group study other people's values, but still believe social scientists should be neutral, unbiased. So, for example, interpretivists analyze values as topics for research, but they assume values should not affect social scientists' aims, theories, methods, or findings. They can be neutral. The third is value committed. It's the belief that social scientists should promote truth, justice, equality, the good society. Goldner and Becker are leading examples of this. The fourth view of critical realism argues it's not a matter of should. We cannot be value free. We're all value committed. All social facts and research are value laden. When you look at the dirty water pouring into and polluting the river, or the poor housing, values will be jumping into your mind, probably. This shouldn't be happening. Things should be better. They should be changed. Social facts include much of the natural world, pollution, climate change. Values greatly influence social scientists' funding, who funds them and why, aims, theories, methods, findings, and conclusions. How do we select what we look at and what we ignore and exclude, for example? Whose side are we on when we make conclusions? You might like to discuss all of these ideas, by the way. We need to try to be aware of our own values as social scientists. Whose side are you on? There's no neutral middle fence to sit on when there's inequality. So critical realists research power and inequality and aim to promote peace and justice. So value-free, neutral. As I've said, there's no balance when working between, for example, the richest 1% in the world who own more than the poorest 50% in the world, or Amazon.com and the Amazon workers in the warehouses, or if there's a dispute between school managers and school students, or between harsh landlords and poor tenants. If we think we're neutral, then we will be on the side of the powerful. Now Harry's going to talk about power.
Yeah, this last one will be much more brief, but power is this huge word that we find across sociology, politics, etc. And we don't think it can be defined in a simple way. So power has one word, but two meanings. So on the one hand, what we call power two can be a destructive, coercive, oppressive power, stealing time, space, peace of mind from people, forcing them to do what they do not want to do. But power cannot be reduced to this. Power can be a creative, transforming power for freedom, respect, peace, and justice. Um, yeah. And to get this a point across, I think we can look at what's going on at the time of recording, almost day by day. And just as a little side note, I think this shows the wonder of sociology, that we're not just looking at theories written in the 1860s, for example, by Marx, or 1890s by Durkheim, but real ideas that can be applied today. So let's look at power in Nepal. Power, as defined by Power 2, was used as an incredibly repressive force, where the regime in Nepal banned 26 social media sites as a way to really clamp down on freedom of speech. However, power has also been used by particularly young people in Nepal who've reacted to this by overthrowing this dictatorship. Holding already a democratic election and bringing forward the first prime minister in Nepalese history. So in this way, we can see the dual nature of power, and that unlike other sociological disciplines, we can't simply reduce this to one word and one meaning. So yeah.
There's some more details in these books if because we've tried to cover lots of complicated ideas very briefly, but we do hope it's helpful. Thanks and bye.